right now, the two countries are in a game of chicken, and the Chinese are waiting for a real signal from President Trump in the form of dropping the unilateral tariffs or reducing them substantially. I think actually President Trump did blink last week when he said that he expected to reduce those tariffs. But I think the Chinese decided not to recognize that. At least the Chinese officials decided not to recognize it. Maybe they saw it more as a wink than a blink, and they don't trust it. But I think, it's not just the Chinese, frankly, it's the world. And I think China's feeling
Right.
pretty confident in their assessment of President Trump, and that, many other
Right.
countries are also looking at the United States in the same way.
Within the Xi realpolitik, do they have the power and the leverage to say to other nations, if you dance with President Trump, you won't dance with China? Do they have that power to say that, to act on that?
It's been interesting to me as I've watched the Chinese go around, first with the charm offensive in Asia and Europe, and then with the more coercive sort of approach that you just noted. I've been surprised at the extent to which China has not managed to translate, the sort of chaotic policy and bullying behavior of the United States into a sort of a greater leverage for China itself. I think we saw Australia say, when China reached out to them, no, thank you. We're not about to join hands. We saw Canada do the same. I think the EU is flirting with China, but they have their own economic problems with China, and they're also, they continue to be extremely unhappy with China's support for Russia and Ukraine. So what I've seen really is that China's not been able, either through coercive messaging or through sort of a more positive approach, to bring countries to its side. That being said, I think there are probably some countries, emerging and middle-income economies that are heavily reliant on China, where that kind of coercive tactic is likely to work. But I think it's important to remember that while China is the largest trading partner
Right.
for most countries in the world, that the U.S. is a larger export market for most countries in the world. And I think that's also playing into this.
So we saw, Elizabeth, just yesterday up in Canada, we saw the result of President Trump's kind of verbal attacks on Canada, 51st state, and all that type of stuff, really united the people of Canada here behind a candidate here. Is something similar happening in China? Are the people uniting behind President Xi on this, hey, this nationalism platform?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the tariffs in that regard have been a real boon to Xi Jinping and to his standing. I think, previously you saw that there was a lot of negative sentiment, for example, in social media in China about the state of the Chinese economy, and it was really directed toward the Chinese government. With the tariffs, basically, the U.S. has become a scapegoat for all of China's economic ills. And so there's a rally around the flag element to what's going on in China. And frankly, I was in Hong Kong last week, and I will tell you that there's increasing confidence in China. And I was at a conference with a lot of leaders from China's tech sector, and they not only feel that they can get around any kind of export restrictions or other kinds of tariffs that the U.S. might be placing on China, but they
Right.
also just have, they're just looking at the United States and thinking, how many own goals can the U.S. government score here? And so
Right.
I think that that is what the tariffs are triggering primarily in China.